Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with listeners like you.
In the house behind, the life you find is something understood. So there's love, those vital
A dream can be meaningful even if you don't know what it means. Do dreams really help us, or are they merely byproducts of the sleep cycle? Meet Professor Bill Domhoff, who will be talking about dreams, sleep, and consciousness. I am your host, Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. Please note that today is a special pre-recorded interview, so we will not be taking callers this week. I hope you enjoy the show and you can save your dream for next week. All right. G. William Domhoff is a pioneering dream researcher who has studied dreaming since 1960. He taught a long-running university course on dreams at UC Santa Cruz through 2019 and has spent decades exploring how dreams work, how we remember them, and what they reveal about the human mind. His latest book is called Dreams, Sleep, and Consciousness: Interweaving the Neurocognitive Theory of Dreaming with New Theories of Sleep and Consciousness. Bill, so glad to have you on the show.
Hey, my pleasure.
You're just down the road a piece. I even went to the University of Santa Cruz between 85 and 93, but I didn't step foot in the psychology department, so we never crossed paths.
You were too serious. You're in all that heavy science.
I thought I was. I don't know. I did my best with it, but I was real happy to move on when it was time to move on.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to talk to you, Bill. You've been on my list for quite a while to get on the show, so I'm delighted to have you here. But I finally got organized to ask you, partly because you are one of the invited speakers at the upcoming conference for the IASD in Ashland in June. And so I heard you speak for the first time in 2017 at, I think it was Anaheim IASD. And I was really struck by your theories of dreams and sleeping. And I would say that I think you'd agree with me to say that they fall outside of the norm of what a lot of people believe about dreaming. And, basically, do you want to, do you want to kind of summarize how you would say that?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you kind of mentioned that 2017 talk, because I think the title of it caught the spirit of what I'm about. And the title of that talk was seven unexpected findings about dreams that changed my thinking about dreams. So the idea is that for me, it's been a journey of exploration. Mm-hmm. I got into this because REM sleep had just become a major thing. It was just 7 or 8 years after that discovery, and it was going to be an exciting era, and it was fun. And I wasn't out to build a grand theory of the world. I was out to understand something new, to discover things. And so in the world of dreams, that was true in the 60s. Then we had a long kind of period where we were spinning our wheels, and then in the 90s, everything changed with neuroimaging. So that's my context, and here I am.
Okay. Excellent. So I understand that one of your theses, or one of the things that you've discovered, one of those surprising thing or unexpected things about dreams, is that your research has shown that dreams are basically byproducts of sleep. They're mind wandering during sleep. Yeah. Is that a fair way to describe one of your conclusions?
Yes, I think the big exciting discovery, which in the mid 1990s, neuroimaging studies were done of REM sleep. Mm-hmm. And the shock was, the big surprise, the fun was that our brain was not totally reactivated, which is what we thought. It was specific parts of the brain. Now, we didn't know quite what to make about that, but about the same time, a neuropsychologist put together a book based partly on his own original, highly original research, showing that lesions, that's very specific hurts to parts of the brain. Some parts of the brain, when they're lesioned, lead to the loss of dreaming, or
Really?
to the loss of vision during dreaming. But more importantly, with lots of the parts of the brain, it doesn't change dreaming at all. But our executive network is not very vigilant. And there's two networks that help the executive network. It has two assistants for our purposes. For example, they're called attention networks. And it's like you're the boss and you wander off topic, and one of the attention, get back on topic. So we got two attention networks. And so they think, oh, nothing to worry about out there. And so they signal basically, all's cool, boss, executive network. And we start to daydream.
Mm-hmm.
And even during one study a person did long ago, but it was in a psychology class, and he said, now, the minute I'm going to have a little starter gun, just a little gun for starting a track. He said, when you hear that sound, I want you to write down just what you were thinking. Only 25% of those students on 7 different occasions were paying attention to the lecture. When's this going to be over? God, I got that test to study for tonight. Why is this guy droning? I mean, on and on. So our mind really wanders.
Mm-hmm.
And we date, and then sometimes we slip into a daydream. And for some people, daydreams are very intense. So the very simple point is a specific network is active when we're daydreaming. And that basically is the network we dream with.
Okay.
So my kind of punchline is dreaming is an intensified form of mind wandering and daydreaming.
I mean, it must be
under certain conditions.
Yeah. And well, I mean, a couple things. One is that it's way more intense, like you say. It's a certain kind of mind wandering. I find that when I'm mind wandering when I'm awake, it's just as clearly as the thought, and I don't feel like I'm in a whole alternate reality. Where when I'm dreaming, I'm fully immersed, and I might even be another kind of a person, or it's much more immersive, the dreaming. So but you're arguing that it's a matter of degree rather than of kind. Is that what I understand? Okay.
Yes, and the basic point is that when you're daydreaming along in the day, those attention networks are still very vigilant. But when they go down, so to speak, when they're really strongly deactivated, I'll put it, then it's all pure mind wandering, and you're just roaming through all your past memories, which are stored in an area of the brain that we call the semantic network. So you're taking we take a random walk through our semantic network, our network of concepts and personal concerns and so on. Now, that lets me take that. I've said, wow, you're walking through a random network. You're walking randomly through your network, right. And I walk through my network, and there are individual differences, and I should throw that in right away. There's certain commonalities, but we're all totally different in various ways on just about everything. So what happens is if I take a random walk through my semantic network, and one of my biggest personal concerns is how Joe X is doing, I'm going to more likely dream about Joe X more often. In fact, if I have 20 years of a person's dreams, I can say, and they dream about, what we basically find is they dream about Joe X about the same number of times every year. So I can say to you, you're going to dream about Joe X in 20% of your dreams, but I cannot tell you which dream you're going to have it in. And that's randomness. Whereas your network may be full of a whole lot of other people and concerns.
Right. And even in one person, this person, Joe, might might leave my life or might die or and become more important for a while. Maybe we're having a fight for a while and then we're better. So do you find that the dreams respond to those waking life concerns?
Yes,
Okay.
in a word, it takes a while to find that kind of thing, but we did have two or three great cases. And one of them I could mention that's kind of fun is that this very caring woman, very open-minded and very concerned about low-income people and so on. She's in her 60s. She's kept her dreams for 30, 40 years for various reasons. And she gives me access to them. She hasn't put them all online, but she's let me use them for research purposes. And what was how I got into studying her dreams was people had made claims about really wild COVID dreams, but I was getting dreams from people that had written down their dreams in 2019, and
Hmm.
now I got their dreams for 2020, and they didn't really change that much. In other words, COVID did not get into dreams in heavy way for most people, not all, certainly. But anyway, this particular woman was really worried about this would spread and low income people would suffer. And she got into the idea of making masks before there were masks everywhere.
Hmm.
So she got herself a new sewing machine and started to make masks.
Hmm.
Well, you just follow a curve of how she dreams more and more and more about making masks, about COVID, delivering the masks. She's giving it to low income self nonprofits, giving them masks. So this goes on for 3 or 4 or 5 months. And as you know, it started to dip in September or so of 2020. And she starts to have dream less about COVID and about these masks. And then in her daytime diary on October 30th, she said, it's maybe time to hit the pause button on masks. Everybody has a mask. And so now it really goes down. So I waited a couple, and I did a book in which I included that information. And then on this current book, I wrote to her again.
Hmm.
And I said, can I have your dreams for the next 3 years? The COVID dreams, the mask dreams have totally disappeared, just like you said. I mean, that's out of her life. And we have it with another woman who kept her dreams for 30, 40 years. And she's online, incidentally, in my dream bank. Her name's Barb Sanders. That's her pseudonym. Everybody's name is a pseudonym.
Okay.
We don't, and we change the city they're from, the town they're from. We put my hometown. We give your sister a new name, but the dreams are the same. But now Nancy is Betty, and so at any rate, in her late 40s, she developed a really strong infatuation on a guy that was a younger. And anyway, for her to make this make more sense, when we'd studied her dreams quantitatively, which we can get into later, then I went up and interviewed her up where she lived. But I said, I also want to interview your best friends. And so I get her take on how she feels about, say, her mother. And then I'd ask them, what's her relationship with her mother like? So that I could check up on her. If my data suggested she had a very conflicted relationship with her mother, and then I go see her and she said, oh, my mother and I get along so well. That's not true. And then I ask her girlfriends and they say, they fight all the time. But
Ah.
sometimes we don't always want to cop to it or
Well, so that's an example, Bill. I'm going to interrupt you because that's exciting because it shows that the dream has a more accurate view of the dreamer than their conscious mind.
Yeah, I do think that dreams reveal our basic conceptions and concerns. If I had 200 dreams from somebody, I can go and I would say, okay, your biggest concern is your older sister. You worry about her a lot. You're often critical. And then you would likely say yes. And I'd say, you dream very little about your younger sister, which was the case of Barb Sanders. And you don't worry about her, you don't think about her that much. And then she said, was very interesting on that. She said, yeah, that's true. She said, she's 6 years younger. She wasn't really part of, but she said, we chat on the phone. We get along well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but her dream revealed what was that this was sister was not a major concern.
Ah,
That's what we dream about, either positive concerns
mhm.
or negative concerns.
Well, that seems useful. I mean, that's even if the dreams are not like actively changing our waking life concerns, that they're reflecting back our waking life concerns in a way that the conscious mind doesn't even recognize. That seems like that's valuable.
Yeah, it does. But it's not about what you did today. It's
Mm.
about what's on your mind when you say, "Oh my God, why did I fail that exam in
Uh,
1942?" Or you know, why
Careful, Bill.
why
You're dating yourself.
that boss and I got fired. I mean,
Yeah.
that's still we talk about hang up. I mean, hang
Mhm.
ups are in dreams. And they're
Yes.
and the thing about the dream is it's in an enactment.
Uh-huh.
It's enacting my concern about my younger sister or my older brother or my rivalry with this guy down the street. It enacts that in a million different ways.
Uh-huh.
So if you look at the dreams of Barb Sander and her mother, which is easy to do incidentally because we have a little search engine. So you call up Barb Sander dreams and you put mother. And
Mhm.
then it goes right to first mother dream and it's highlighted. And then you can read all about what she and her mother are arguing about that in that dream, and or who's criticizing whom in that dream, which is the mother criticizing her or she criticizing her mother.
Mhm.
Well, you get a really in other words, obviously dream journals. It's
Uh-huh.
one of the things that you mentioned, IASD, the International Association for the Study of Dreams. It's I always think of IASD of people of many different interests and tribes. They have one general interest, and that's dreams. They
Right.
all come together, and so there were a lot of people that kept dream journals for a lot of personal reasons. But for me, if they gave me the dreams, which some of them did,
Mm.
and which this Barb Sanders did, they're invaluable to me because that's something you wrote down for yourself. You weren't thinking, I'm going to write down my dreams for posterity or I'm going to write them down for make money or something. You just wrote them down. And then later you say, you see me and you say, you want to have my dreams? I say, yeah, they're invaluable for me because they're, you're not, you're not putting on airs in your dreams,
Right.
so to speak.
So
I
that's a great
interview you on
resource.
guard. You would say, what does Bill want to hear?
Mhm.
I want to make sure he's happy with this interview. And so you might give me what you think I want to hear. See, you got all these problems, called methods problems, that can make it so data is not accurate.
Well,
So
there's still a lot of selection.
good. The what?
I mean, there's still a big selection, in fact. I mean, I notice this in my own dreams of which ones I write down. Like, I could wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm not going to write down that one. Like, maybe it's too boring, or
Yeah.
something. So there's a
Other
lot of
people
selection
write down
effects.
every dream that write,
Oh, gosh. It would be overwhelming.
and for different reasons. And so one man who we got his dreams from, he had never been concerned in his life with, writing down dreams or an interest in it. But his wife died. And then shortly after she died, she
Mm.
appeared in a dream.
Oh.
We call him back. If he recognizes that's my deceased wife, in other words, if he's aware that she's deceased, we call those kind of back to life dreams. And he had a couple of those in the first month or two, and it got him writing down now this is selective, but it's every dream about his deceased wife.
Hmm.
Got 22 years, 144 dreams.
Mm.
That's a
Well,
value.
that
And
is.
so I mean, I could tell you that it's just a lot of different reasons people write down their dreams, including the one I had on my mind, which was this was a guy. I went to a meeting of physiologists where there was something going on about sleep. And this guy, young man, comes up and he starts quizzing me and a little bit officiously. And then he said, you guys, in other words, was I a serious scientist? And finally he said, well, I have a set of dreams. I said, you do? He said, yeah, I decided I wanted to know what they're like. So he was shot out of a cannon focus. And he'd written down his dreams for 3 years.
Oh.
Years 18, 19, 20, every dream. And that was his and his compulsiveness really paid off for us. So we
Yeah.
studied his dreams. Can't think of his pseudonym right now, but they sure didn't change much in those 3 years, and
Hmm.
75% of his dreams, he dreamed about, a family member, a friend, or his interest in basketball or in outdoors. I mean,
Hmm.
so there are 25% that, weren't some aspect of his personal concern. So I think we have a good basis for saying that we dream about our, what I use that fancy word, conceptions. You might have a conception of your mother as very friendly but not reliable, or my mother is very supportive, but she's very fierce when I do wrong. I mean, so we have different conceptions of different people, and we portray those conceptions in our dreams.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. So that's like 75% of the dreams that deal with the common concerns and the relationships in our life. But there's another thing that I understand that you propose something called adventure dreams. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about adventure dreams.
Yes, I think that uh, anywhere from 15 to 30% of dreams are based on sort of cultural conceptions and concerns, things we know about that don't tie to our own everyday lives. Here, I just back up a tiny second and say the first thing we studied is you should study what you got to purchase on. It's like if you're trying to climb a mountain, you don't go where you want to go. You go where there's some rocks that'll let you go that far. So we did a lot about the personal concern stuff that we've spent a lot of time on here. But there were still other dreams, and people would say, "How many of them are there?" They were skeptical. They'd say, "Well, what percentage and all?" And so I had to get into figuring out. And I thought, I think it's 70 to 75. But anyway, then we got the chance to study some dream series that had some stuff in it that surprises. So I'm back to Barb Sanders, although we have 15, 20 others, but nothing as good as hers, and nothing where I could interview the person in as much depth and her friend. At any rate, she had a whole lot of dreams in which she was riding on a horse very proficiently. She often had a gun, and it was like cowboys and Indians, except it wasn't Native Americans. And but one dream, for example, she's riding, she catches up with this woman. The woman has a gun. She takes the woman's gun and shoots her.
Mm.
And that was a set of dreams. And another set of dreams was really focused very much strictly on horses. In other words, they weren't guns. Now, there were some dreams that had both guns and horses. So I figured, so I asked my question. I said, so you're very interested in horses, and you're quite a good rider. And she looked at me and said, no, no. She said,
Mm.
I'm Max. And I remember where she said, Max. 6 or 7 times I've been on a horse. Somebody was leading it. They're scary. They bite. I don't like them.
Mm.
And so
Interesting.
I had to know why I was totally, so that, I mean, when you're wrong, it's useful. I mean,
Yeah.
because it forces you to rethink, to learn new things.
Yeah.
So the same way, then I said, well, you're really good with guns. You shoot guns. And like, no. She said, once I went to the shooting range to kind of, the person she was married to at the time, I went to, just kind of go along, mollify and, try to develop an interest. No, she said, I've never, touched a gun. Yet here she is in her dream shooting people.
In multiple dreams, like a whole series of dreams.
Yeah. And they were, they were scattered throughout, but
Sure.
I have 4,200 dreams from her.
Right.
But the point is, when you look at those dreams, what you find is there's usually no known characters, and it's not a known scene.
Huh.
Like we dream most often in familiar settings, in our house, or I was at my workplace, or I was up at school, or I was walking down Main Street. So we have most of our dreams have at least one familiar setting, or at least one familiar character, and so on. So we take an extreme and say, let's look at all dreams that have no familiar characters, no familiar setting. And you look at those dreams and you compare them with dreams in which there are familiar people. Let's just take the people part. I'm complicating.
Sure.
Most recent thing we did, and that I put in the Dream, Sleep, and Consciousness book, um, was to compare our big database. Uh, we got all the dreams that had only familiar characters, and we got all the dreams that had only unfamiliar characters.
Okay.
How are they differ? Well, the dreams with unfamiliar characters are much more dangerous. There's much more misfortune happens. A misfortune in dreams is, say, a tree falls on you. You can't get the key to work. The car engine won't start. Uh, those, just they happen out of the blue.
Yeah.
And is when somebody says, I don't like you, they hit you, or they break the window in your car, or take a shot at you, then, that's an aggression. So there's far more aggression, far more misfortune.
Mhm.
And we're far more often the victims of an aggression. In other words, an aggression in dreams, I can go over and say, get out of this house. But I could also have a dream where you say, Dom, leave. That's I've been aggressed on,
Mhm.
as opposed to me aggressing. So I'm far more likely to be a victim as opposed to an initiator of aggression, far more likely to be have an misfortune happen to me, and other things. But that makes the point.
So what do you make of these different kind of dreams? That's almost a third of people's dreams, certainly a quarter. What do you make of these kind of dreams? You could call them adventure dreams, and
Yeah. Well, what I make of them is that we all have the conceptions. We've all maybe seen a movie. We've all seen people shoot guns. Of course, a lot of my participants grew up they grew up on Saturday movies that were cowboys and Indians. I'm saying take in what the culture, something about
Mhm.
movies, but maybe you never go, something about modern day media, social media, but you don't partake in them.
So you think they're maybe culturally inspired in a
Yeah,
way.
so I know that, and I can use that in a dream. If you can imagine it, if you have a conception and you can imagine it, I think you can dream it.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting because it always brings up for me the idea that, so I had, like say I have, a dream that has a scene from a movie I just saw. Like, okay, so maybe the movie stimulated the dream, but why that one particular scene? Because it's not always obvious, like emotionally or in what way, why that is. And so it's interesting, like the woman chose her psyche or her, whatever, her dream maker or whatever you want to say, her neural networks, chose a horse and guns. Like you say, maybe she grew up watching a lot of that, but she probably watched gangster movies too, and
Yeah.
train movies. And why isn't she talking about trains, or why not race cars? Like, but for her, it was horses.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
I think that um I think that you've summarized it correctly, but I think one implication in what you said, they have this particular dream. I don't think I can, in what all I've said today, I'm not implied I can interpret one particular dream. For me to interpret a particular dream, I need the other dreams.
Well, yeah,
I
right.
need to know
Hmm.
if I need to know what is typical. Now, let me jump in here in a way that might also be of interest to your listeners.
Just to let you know, we're going to go to a break in just a minute or two. So I want to hear what you have to say, but just to let you know that we need to take a break. But we talk lots more about it after the break. So why don't we just introduce the topic, and then we can get into it more after the break.
Let me introduce the topic.
Yeah.
It's in dreams.
What dreams?
The topic will be the appearance of friends in dreams and the interaction of friendliness in dreams. That will be the topic.
Okay.
And it's diagnostic.
Really? Friendliness in dreams. Oh, I can't wait. Oh, this sounds very fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is G. William Domhoff, otherwise known as Bill Domhoff, and we are talking about his new book, which is called Dreams, Sleep, and Consciousness, which is the result of a considerable amount of research And it has a lot to do with consciousness and the brain, and how the brain supports consciousness and dreaming and sleep. So if you enjoy this podcast, consider checking out our full-length videos of the conversation. You can find them on Spotify and also on my YouTube page at Experiential Dreamwork. After this short break, we are going to go into the topic of friendliness. And I also want to get into the idea of what dreaming has to say about consciousness and self-awareness. And there's some very interesting topics. And if we have time, I'd like to talk a little bit about sleep onset, and awakening from sleep. So we will be right back. Please note that today is a special pre-recorded interview, so we will not be taking callers this week. I hope you enjoy the show and tune back in again next week. You are listening to The Dream Journal, and I am Katherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork. People all over the world are interested in their dreams. If you want to help us nudge the algorithm to spread interest in dreaming, please subscribe to The Dream Journal on your favorite podcast app. And thank you so much for your generous ratings and reviews. And thanks also for sharing episodes on your social media. It really helps spread information about dreaming. But really, most importantly, please consider telling your friends about the show. You might just find your next dream sharing buddy. You can also follow The Dream Journal on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube by looking for @Experiential Dreamwork. Today's guest is Bill Domhoff, a professor at UC Santa Cruz Emeritus, and we are talking about research into his amazing database of dreams. Can you tell us again the name of that database in case people want to check into that, Bill?
Dreambank.net.
Dreambank.net.
Our academic site called dreamresearch.net, which has links to a lot of different papers and to talks I've given over the years.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll put some links in the show notes. So we are going to start off by talking about friends and friendliness in dreams. What have you discovered from your research into this huge data set?
First of all, it's important to say, excuse me, the break gave me a chance to have a sip of tea, and so we'll see how I do. The first thing to say when I'm going to talk about friends and dreams and that they're diagnostic, they're very revealing, is that we have this large database that we've collected from students in the past. I can't get into details just for time purposes, but I know what typical people dream about. The percentage of men in their dreams, the percentage of friendliness, the percentage of this, the percentage of that. And that we call a baseline. And then I can compare that with others. And we can do that for a wide variety of things in dreams because we classify everything that appears in a dream. And you've gotten that hint from me talking about friends and so on. At any rate, we know friends appear a certain amount of time in dreams. And then very early in the mid-1960s, we had an opportunity to get hold of dreams that a psychiatrist collected at a mental hospital, which were then very large, and he had a wide variety of patients. And so my teacher and mentor that I was working with, he then studied those dreams, not me, he. And what was striking was that those dreams didn't differ as much from other people's dreams as you might think, in terms of sort of craziness or bizarreness or anything like that. What was striking is there were no friends.
Oh, wow.
There were people we call strangers, that is, unknown people are coming down the street. There's a guy there, there's a guy there, or our family. And so this was in a set of psychiatric dreams. Then we had the opportunity to study the dreams of a man who had written down dreams for thousands of dreams while he was in um, a, a psychiatric mental hospital because he was a child molester.
Mm.
And for his own reasons, on the back of pieces of paper, laundry lists, everything, he started writing down his dreams. And then when he was interviewed by a clinical psychologist, they asked him what he was doing. He said he's writing down his dreams. Eventually, we ended up with those dreams. The striking thing in his dreams is, again, a lack of friends.
Wow.
Only he dreams mostly about his mother and his sister. And there's friendly interactions in his dreams because he has friendly interactions with his mother and his sister, but he never interacts with friends. Now, a quick example here came out of one of my students' work because they were allowed to they had to do a project on something of interest to them. They could study their own dreams. And this was a young woman who had written down her dreams a year or so before and then been in therapy, but now she was on a new upper drug, a Prozac, I think it was. And so she was able to do her brilliant idea was before and after Prozac. And the amount of friends in her dreams, the amount of friendliness went up. And so we became to think that if I'm reading through a dream series and I've read about 10 or 15 of the dreams, and I said, I haven't seen one person called a friend, and I've got them all on on a digitized so I can search a friend. And wow, I don't see any sign of friendliness, friendship, whatever. That immediately is a warning sign to me
Wow.
because of the work that we have done. And if you think about it from any theoretical perspective, we are creatures that grow up in a family. We're very close to that family. And one of the things is, are they going to make friends in kindergarten? Oh, my kid's got a little friend. Can they make friends?
Hmm.
Some people very early, they never can take the step outside of their family of origin. It's just a difficulty for them, or people don't like them, and it's a spiral from there. So that lack of friendliness in dreams, I think, is the most diagnostic.
Interesting. Now, these are people that they know in waking life, or a friend in a dream is somebody that they know from waking life that would show
Yeah,
up in.
and they define them. My friend, people say my best friend Nancy, or my
Hmm.
friend, or my boyfriend, or
Yeah.
kinds of words, and we make a distinction. Like if they dream about their teacher, that's a known person.
Right.
We won't really think of our teacher as our friend, but we could extend that analysis because we do have a category for known versus friend, and see, do they ever sort of reach outside the family of origin, their nuclear family?
Hmm.
So that's where that becomes a very interesting kind of thing.
So it could be diagnostic of mental illness,
Yeah,
basically.
I
Interesting.
think, well, it's the best. If somebody asks me, what's the best indicator?
Hmm.
What would I look for in dreams of patients? It would be lack of friends, which reminds me that we also had the dreams from a psychologist that had a young guy in counseling, and he was just always, he's just angry all the time and so on, and frustrated with his wife, angry with his mother. He never dreamed about any friends,
Ah,
only about those things that were just so his mind was so tunneled in on his mother, his uh, uh, his wife, and just a few other things. So he just had no friends. So
mhm.
but see, all that kind of stuff that would have to be done in larger research and done by others to see it. I know how to do it. I wrote a chapter in 2015 on friends and friendliness and dreams. So if you have an obsessive compulsive clinic or an anxiety, clinic or any kind of situation, you ask people when they come in as part of the protocol, the intake, the questionnaire, would you please write down your most recent dream? Tell us when it was, like yesterday, the day before, put the date on it, and write down your most recent dream. So if we have the intake dream, the presentation dream of, say, people with OCD or anxiety or whatever it is, panic attack, and then we every time they come back for a checkup or medication, ask them to write down their most recent dream.
Hmm.
I think we'll see changes in those dreams collectively if the treatment is working.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's really helpful though.
What's the next?
Oh, I think that's a very interesting thing that people can really look at with their own dreams and see. Like I'm going through my own dreams. I do have friends fairly often in dreams, but there's also people often with me that I don't know, but they're friendly. So I'm glad you have that category because I like have often just have a whole group of
Yeah.
people with me, and there's just like my posse or something.
Right. Well, it's possible to be friendly with strangers.
Right, right.
Right? But in general, in dreams, a stranger that walks into dreams, especially, well, I got to be specific here. A male stranger is a danger.
Mm.
When strange women that are unknown are not seen as threatening by either men or women.
Hmm.
And here I got to be careful. I cannot trust my memory. I'd have to. But I wrote a careful, long analysis in 2017 book on that of looking at that kind of a question. So
Well,
unknown males are dangerous,
yeah.
and if there's a group of them, then that's more dangerous. I mean,
Well,
that's an quotes an empirical fact. It's a finding, not a deduction from a theory. It's from looking at and quantifying a lot of dreams, comparing them with norms, doing the fancy statistics that makes me say that.
mhm.
It's not intuition. It's not
Right. And it is statistical because women can be dangerous too. Certainly, I have plenty of dreams where women are at least not helpful.
yeah.
Right.
But
But I don't usually.
and we are different. I mean, that's why I could, say you have this, you like all your sisters or you like all your brothers or, but I can't say that in general about people, but I know what's typical. Once I know what's typical, I can look at the individual. It's just the same as a personality test. If any personality test has a set of norms to it. And so you take this test and then they're comparing you with what's called the normative, which doesn't necessarily mean normal, but it means what's the typical, the kind of dream, what's the typical kind of personality profile. So it's very descriptive empirical work is what it's called. It's not
Okay.
fancy theoretical work.
So, Bill, I want to switch gears here because I want to talk to you about consciousness, and this is like one of the main topics of your book, and one of the things that you have a lot to say about what dreaming has to say about consciousness, and you in particular draw this distinction between knowing and self-knowing states. I think that if I get that right, there's a state of like knowing what's happening, and then there's another state of like knowing that I'm part of it. Is that how that works?
When I can say, if I was intensely involved in some activity, I wouldn't be necessarily reflecting, oh, I am involved in this activity. Self-knowing is when I know that I myself am involved in this activity. I am right now on this podcast.
Right.
In dreaming, we don't usually have that ability to self-reflect. That's a capability that comes from the networks in our brain that are relatively deactivated during sleep. Those networks are very important in waking. Some of those networks, quite frankly, are networks that developed only in the last several 100,000 years of human evolution.
That recent.
One part of our brain that is not in any other high primate, any other ape. And so that's a very important part of the whole self-reflective process. Mm-hmm. The other thing about our brains is different that I want to overemphasize just the acquisition part, but our brains are much more heavily wired front and back. And so we can call much more on spatial information and visual information and kinds of ways that we don't think is possible if you don't have that particular brain. The other thing is our metabolism is running a lot faster. Our engine is really spinning. And so one neurologist guy that really studies he talked about the human brain. He said, rewired and running hot.
That's compared to other primates.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Even compared to other primates. So
two things I have coming up for me here, Bill. I want to jump in. One is that even when we're awake, there's like, I would say 90 to 95% of my day, I'm not self-conscious. I'm just doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right.
But
So a lot of the time when I'm awake, I'm just doing what I'm doing.
Right. I know I'm picking up this. I know I'm doing that, but I'm not self-reflective.
Right.
Consciousness involves that ability to be self-reflective.
Right.
Many other primates and little kids, and have that ability. They're knowing during their activity. We are knowing during our dreams. We know we see Frank. We know I'm so angry, I'm going to punch that guy. And you walk over and punch him. We're knowing.
Right.
But we're usually not self-reflective. But
unless we're lucid.
Yes. And here, the only thing, the way it would add to that, if we have to understand those states, is this network that's pretty narrow, usually during sleep. We know it can get enlarged during sleep. We know that's true during insomnia. And we know that PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder patients, their brains are much more active. Their brains are really active, especially their vigilance, attention kind of networks. And so they wake up a lot more. So it's a lot of time. This executive network I talked about, it can be inwardly turned or it can be outwardly turned. So if we're inwardly and what seems to happen in the very few studies we have of people who are report lucid dreaming when you have a neuroimaging capability on them or EEG, areas in their brains are more active than they are in a non-lucid dream. So and so it's a amount of brain that's available that determines, according to this kind of perspective, this neurocognitive perspective we call it, then you can explain lucid dreaming. You can also explain things. There's kind of insomnia that forget the current name of it, but it was called pseudo insomnia, where people say, "I don't sleep at night." So get them in the lab, and they show a EEG that has signs of sleep, and then they talk to them in the morning. They say, "See what I mean? I didn't sleep at all last night." But so, I mean, that's a phenomenon that deserves to be studied in terms of this consciousness.
That's going to be hard to capture in a laboratory, though, I would think.
What?
That might be hard to capture in a laboratory because it might.
Yeah. Well, that's the tricky part. I mean, it's hard to have a lucid dream in a laboratory too.
So what does it say about consciousness? What does it say about like the phenomenon? You said that the human brain has some structures and some communication front to back that other primates don't have. And are these things implicated then in this like awareness of this is me in the moment, like which is what people think of as consciousness?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's yes. It's the network that makes decisions is also the network that reflects on a memory, that makes judgments and can make judgments like, Domhoff, you just did something stupid, or oh geez, I just said something that's wrong, but we don't have time to correct it. I mean, that meta memory is not always, it's not usually there in dreams as far as we know. So that we have, the point is, it gives a very sound basis for understanding these various phenomena during sleep. And but let me add just one quick thing, because I know we're running out of time here.
Yeah, sure.
When you look at consciousness, I think the research that I trust the most says that it's sort of multi-level to our brain, in terms of there's a whole part of our brain that's taking all sensory information. It's then funneled in such a way that it can now be related to other concepts, to past visual imagery, to past auditory imagery. That happens in the middle levels, and it's that middle level that we dream with.
Tell me more about this middle level. Yeah.
Is where is this executive network that's making decisions about what I'm going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a thing for a dream. It's not getting any sensory input,
Right.
and it's not getting any guidance. So it's the brain. That's why I said it's semantic network roaming freely. It's better said, it's your imagination roaming freely. Your imagination can't roam too far during the day, or you'll drive off on the curb.
Yeah, really.
Or you'll get totally lost from the lecture, or you'll burn yourself on the stove. I mean, there's always that vigilance there that that constrains the roaming. The tendency to roam, which is in this particular area of the brain, that is imagination and mind wandering. It has a name. It's called the default network. In other words, when we're not really focused, we start to think again about what a loose end. What am I going to do tomorrow? Why did I do that yesterday when I could have done something differently? That's what we do when we're not right on target. And that's much more in this intermediate network, which is what houses imagination, memory, concepts, and so on.
And this part stays active while we're sleeping. This is one of the things I'm fascinated by, that the executive function goes offline when we're sleeping, and the sensory input also goes offline, the sight and the hearing for the most part. And so but the imagination network continues. It's the default mode network that you're talking about, continues to be active. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, but that's a really good, glad you said that, because we speed along here. It only is active at certain times. In other words, at a certain point, neuroimaging studies show this. As we fall asleep, the executive network falls asleep first. And careful studies of falling asleep, where they ask, what's going through your mind?
Yeah.
Tell me your thought. At a certain point, we dream during the sleep onset process, which is very important, quotes, academically, because it shows dreaming is not just during sleep. It is when we no longer have the executive network in action. Then we fall asleep. That's tricky then, because we're really now off. But there's still this, I mean, we're really hard to awaken at that point. But what happens is that this core area, it's the core area of the default network that we dream with, as we slip this, add levels of complexity, that core area that we dream with, at that point, at a certain point, that network breaks apart. In other words, the frontal and posterior areas, the back and the front of the network, break apart. And you do not dream, I claim, during a lot of your sleep.
We're trying to cram so much into this hour. I really appreciate so much your showing up here on the show. Bill's book, Bill Domhoff, Domhoff, is called Dreams, Sleep, and Consciousness, Interweaving the Neurocognitive Theory of Dreaming with New Theories of Sleep and Consciousness. And I wonder if you have any just last minute encouragements. Like, what do we take from what you're saying? How do we, what do you want to say? The final words to the listeners. What do you got?
I think we know why we dream. I think we know why we sleep. And I think we know why we have consciousness. And I think we owe it to the new neuroimaging research. And we owe it to the new research on human evolution. And I think that this is all stuff that really takes off from 1995, 96, and especially in the early 2000s. And now there are thousands of people studying this kind of thing, mostly during waking, and trying to deal with the toughest things we have: autism, Alzheimer's, all those kinds of things. So dreaming is one small part of it. It's secondary in terms of these things that matter in terms of human health and safety.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Bill. So thank you. And to my listeners, thank you all for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz. We are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It spreads interest in dreaming when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Katherine Bell. Find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Email me at katherine@ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork and hashtag The Dream Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to keep up with the shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator. Audio editing by Suki Wessling. Phones by Eric Nelson. And the intro and outro pieces are both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
There's a